Oops, sorry, I've just had this meeting is being recorded into my ear. So I'll start again. This is our fifth FAQ as Business West, and this one is our first actually as being an official gateway for the DWP. So with the chambers of commerce around the country, we just all had our grant agreements, our first applications, grants approved on Friday. So that means that we've gone through all the due diligence and the spotlight checks, and we can now hopefully proceed a bit quicker than we have been. So just as a heads up, this process has been very slow, and it still is very slow. The DWP, it's fair to say, have been struggling with the volume. And to date, there's only some of the larger companies vacancies have gone live. I know that they have a backlog with vacancies going up on the central portal that they have, which we'll explain a little bit about. So it's fair to say this is not a quick process. It's not something that will happen quickly for you as a business. So if it's something that you're looking for in the short term, if there's vacancies or roles that you're looking to fulfill in the short term, we can talk to you about that as well. But I would say a short-term solution is not with Kickstart, and it's also obviously quite a lot of work. So we've got all of my team here with us this morning. So we've got Julia Gurr, who's our business skills advisor, Lizzie Lyons and Barry Tugwood. And they've been working with me in the skills team for about 6 years now. So we've got quite a lot of experience and knowledge between us on the skills and training landscape in the region. And we're going to share the Kickstart presentation between us today, because normally I do it all, but I'm bringing the team in to do bits of it as well. So we're going to go through what Kickstart is, what it's not, the financial and contractual arrangements around it, and then we'll have some FAQs, and we'll pick your FAQs up from the chat as we go through too. So next steps, if you haven't already, and I'll come back to this at the end, please go to our website. We've got a Kickstart page on there, and I'll put this in the chat, and you can register your expression of interest. What will happen afterwards, you'll receive an email from us with a Smart Survey link. And within that link is all the questions. So it's basically the application that we have to put forward to the DWP. So there's questions about the job roles, the environment, the skills and aptitudes that you're looking for, where they'll be working, what support you're going to give them, and also information about the job roles, because all of these job roles must be additional. They can't be replacing existing jobs or furloughed staff or redundant staff. Any issues, please email us at skills@businesswest. And if the Smart Survey can be completed by Friday the 29th of January, our intention then would be to gather them together and put in what would be our third cohort of businesses to DWP. So thanks again for joining us. By joining us today, it means that you're an employer offering an opportunity for a young person to unlock their potential, or that you are open to employing a young person to unlock their potential. So we're really pleased that you could join us. Business West, as I said, is a gateway organisation for businesses wanting to offer less than 30 placements. So if you're a larger business and you can offer 30 placements alone, you would apply directly to DWP. We have, as Business West and one of the leading sort of British Chamber of Commerce, been putting direct input into the shaping of the Kickstart programme. So I started working on this in July, and we're only starting to see now, obviously, the roles coming forward. So it's fair to say it's taken quite some time. We're, as Business West, as a cohort, we're looking for businesses to offer quality placements and quality outcomes. And to that end, we'll be asking businesses to sign up to sort of a charter for quality. And within all of that, there's a grant agreement and evidence that needs to be collected and recorded. And you would be assigned one of our business skills advisors who would work through all of that with you, and particularly the grant spend, because we have to have a record of how you're going to spend that grant, and we need evidence to show for the audit. Also, the skills advisor would obviously give you advice throughout the programme on any other support that you need. So that's how we're going to work as a consortia. So these are just some of the pointers that we as Business West have to tell the DWP that we're going to do as a cohort. So we need to support the candidate with all of those basic skills like timekeeping, attendance, teamwork. We also have to prepare them for long-term career. So after the 6-month placement, you don't have to take them on, but you have to have given them the support to be ready for them to go on to the next job. And one of the things we'll be doing with Business West is working with partners to look at what those long-term options might be. So it might be that we help you convert that Kickstart into an apprenticeship, for example, because there's also funding around apprenticeships at the moment. So we'll share our expertise in all of those areas with you to help you onboard the person and to train the young person as you go through, keep in touch with you regularly, but also we'll be bringing you into some of the other programs that we run at Business West. We've got if you're in the west of England, we've got a really good program at the moment for SMEs, which is workforce development planning. There's peer-to-peer networking within that, and that's all free to SMEs. And obviously we've also got our international, our innovation programs as well. So all of that is obviously open to you as a business. So I'm just going to highlight some of the things here that we have to do after this meeting. If you decided to go through us, we would then submit that online application. So we take your smart survey response and we put that into a very complex table, and there's an online application that we do on behalf of the group of employers, and we submit the job descriptions as well for you. We don't have to submit the job descriptions until after the placements have been approved, but what we try to do is get as much information for you up front and to try and get you to think about it as much as possible. So we also manage the grants and we pass on the relevant payments to you. That's including the salaries. And the Gateway organisation is paid only actually £360 to do all of this once a placement has commenced. So as you can see, it's in our best interest as Business West to make sure that the businesses that we're working for are really committed to the process, and that also the interview process and everything and the onboarding goes really well, because we only get paid that £360 once they've commenced in week 1. So I'm just going to skip over this. We will provide these slides, but there's just some stats there around young people and how they're often hit worse in the financial crisis. At the moment, in the Southwest, our unemployment has doubled across all ages. But in young people, although unemployment at the moment in young people actually isn't as bad as it was in 2016 and previously, we think once furlough ends, there's still been a huge increase in claimants, but we do think that once furlough ends, we're going to see a lot of young people unemployed on the market, particularly apprentices that might have to be let go, and also the cohort of graduates that will be coming out in July will find it really hard to find work. So it's fair to say that when the scheme was set up, it was looking at those that were really long-term unemployed, and that those will be the sort of first cohort that DWP put forward, will be those that have been long-term unemployed. But I think it's fair to say that we're going to, see many more young people coming onto the unemployment market post-March. So I just wanted to quickly show you this in terms of where Kickstart sits within all of the government incentives. Kickstart here is as an entry-level employment for 16 to 24, and there's all these other government incentives here that you can see that you might have heard about, and these are all the things that we can support you with as well as a business. If Kickstart isn't for you, or if Kickstart is for you, but you also want to explore these other routes as well. So I'm just going to pass over to Barry Tugwood, our business skills advisor, and Barry's going to just go through what Kickstart is. Hi, Barry.
Thanks, Nikki. Good morning, everybody. Nice to see you all this morning. So yes, I'm going to go through sort of the nuts and bolts of what Kickstart is, and sort of get some of those basics sort of understood. Many of you will have heard quite a little bit about it, but I'll go through, and obviously we have chat for any questions that you want to post, and we'll cover as many as we can at the end as well. As we've said, it's a massive programme from the government, £2 billion of funding coming into this scheme. And it's to help those young people 16 to 24 who are currently on universal credit and at risk of long-term unemployment. As Nikki said, sadly, we're in unprecedented times. So, that pool of young people is larger than usual, and it's probably likely to get larger. So from that side of things, it's sad, but from the point of view of looking for a Kickstart placement, the talent pool should be slightly wider than usual. So there's opportunities there for both businesses and young people. It's a 6-month entry-level position roles, and it's about the opportunity to develop those young people and give them more employability skills, learn some skills, learn about a job for those 6 months. Now, you can obviously, after the 6 months, keep those young people on, and that's obviously one of the main aims of it. But Kickstart will fund 100% of that 6-month programme to start with. And they'll support that for 25 hours a week at the national minimum wage of 25 hours a week for the age group. And they'll also add on all the associated costs you might find with that. So the national insurance contributions will be paid, and the enrolment into pension scheme contributions that you have. It's worth mentioning at this point, although the DWP government will be paying those 25 hours at national minimum wage, you can pay more. So if you feel that your role is actually, you feel the skills that's needed for that role and the job that you have warrants more, you can actually do that. And you can actually also employ them for longer than 25 hours. But unfortunately, you'll only be paid for those 25 hours that's stated. So moving on to the next slide. Thank you, Nikki. It's really good because it is open to all sectors, all sorts of businesses, no size restrictions. There's no sort of restraints being put on what that placement will actually be, as long as you are trading. So as long as you've been trading for a little while, it's open to everybody. So, a lot of imagination about what new roles there actually could be in there. Unincorporated businesses, in terms of those that aren't limited, such as sole traders or partnerships, and there's probably some of you here today, there's certainly lots that want to be on the programme. They won't actually have a company number for eligibility, but there has been no restrictions put on them applying to be Kickstart and want to be involved. They do have to be trading, obviously, and they need to have the ability to have a PAY set up for the candidate starting. That could cause issues for some of those sole traders and partnerships. Some partners that we're aware of will be going down the road of employing Kickstart placements for such businesses. Business West have decided not to go down that road because of our makeup, but we certainly will have contacts such as the Federation of Small Businesses and other partners that are looking into that and reviewing it at the moment. So they're not precluded. So, we still welcome applications from them in the spirit of all businesses, all sectors, all sizes, because they're an important part of the whole makeup of businesses today. If applicable, you need to be able to set them up on a pension scheme as well for that candidate, as would be expected in most roles these days. Next slide. Right, so I'm going to go into a little bit what the roles created must be. And it's important to get these sorts of ideas in your head. They must be new roles. So not something that's been already in the business or you were going to do anyway. We really want something that's going to be a benefit to the business, which is innovative, which is a new role, which is actually driving the business on and also giving that young person opportunity to grow and develop. As I've mentioned, must be a minimum of 25 hours a week for 6 months, but obviously, as I said, there's no shackling around being able to give them more hours as long as the employer foots the bill for it. National minimum wage, that's changing in April as well. It goes up slightly, but not enormously. One important point is, if you come up with a role that needs a lot of skills and training before, then they shouldn't really be required to actually take that training before they begin the job placement. So if they need to learn how to become a top salesperson and go on a sales course first, then that's not really in the spirit of what it is. Once they're in the placement there, obviously, we encourage you to give them the training they need for that role, but they're not really required to undertake extensive training before the placement starts. Obviously, we want them to have a quality learning opportunity. It needs to be a safe environment, especially in these unprecedented times, to make sure that they can learn and develop as we would all like to. Interesting point, Department of Work and Pensions job coaches will actually be the ones that match the job roles to the candidates they actually have. So once you get a job role advertised, it will go to the DWP, and the job coach will actually look on their register of candidates and see who matches or is interested in that type of role and forward those to the actual employer. It will then go down the normal route you would expect. Employers can interview in the way they would like to interview. They can choose the placements. You're not obliged to take people on if there isn't a fit. If some people start and they don't actually work out, same situation as any employee, that can be ended, and you can actually look again at other placements, because employers can have more than one opportunity and more than one placement if they can actually cope with more numbers. And as I mentioned, also the employer can top up the wages and a bit more than national minimum wage should they desire to. Okay, so the roles created cannot, and this is really quite important, replace existing or planned vacancies. This really wants to be innovative. It really wants to be something that would be lovely to have in the business as it is, not just to actually replace what's existing and so on. So, this will be looked at in the application. It shouldn't cause any existing employees, apprentices, contractors to lose any of their employment opportunity or reduce their hours, because that sort of defeats the object of what's trying to happen. The temptation sometimes might be to retrofit it to an employee. That also is not in the spirit of Kickstart. It's not for actually designing a job for somebody that actually can be reverse engineered into that position. That's not to say if someone is on universal credit, they can't make themselves aware to the job coach that they're interested in specific roles. But in terms of the spirit of the whole thing, it's actually advertising a new role for candidates to be matched to it that are on that universal credit list at the DWP. The advertisement is going to be on a national portal and actually rolled out into the regions and local DWPs. So we're not looking for those to be advertised externally, extra to the route that DWP will take. As I say, it's all about being inclusive to the business and keeping that young person as a new employee as anybody else actually would want to. Okay, so just to reconfirm what Kickstart is not, and this is just something to keep in our minds really. Would you, if you come up with a role, would you expect that role, someone to do that role for the minimum wage? Is it something, if you want them to go out, as I say, and be you won't, of course, but for instance, a really good salesperson and get out there in front of people straight away. A time-seasoned salesperson would obviously be paid a lot more than and having more experience than someone who's on that Kickstart role. Importantly, and this is quite a biggie really, and when it comes to being approved by the DWP, we need to really look at, do you have someone in the organisation that can mentor them full time? And by full time, we mean that they are available for that person during those 25 hours or however long you employ them for. Because, mentoring is really important. And if an organisation thinks, well, I've got 1 or 2 people in my business, but actually it would be really great if I could take on 10 Kickstarters, there might be an eyebrow raised of, well, how can you really look after those young people and mentor them, and if there's any issues, help them out. So that's something to bear in mind as well, in terms of the capacity for the organisation and the people within it to mentor and look after that young person. And it goes to all the support that you would offer an employee. You know, have they got the resources at their disposal? Have they got the backup and the support? Are they not isolated? Can you really keep them, you know, nurtured and developed? We've got a situation with COVID at the moment, so that's something that we're all bearing in mind every day, I'm sure. But can you actually onboard them in COVID? You know, if you're thinking of roles where they're maybe working from home, you know, you have limited physical contact with them and so on, can you actually support them in the home? Are they working in a supportive environment at home? Do they have the resources? Can you mentor them again? And can you actually make sure everything will work for them and yourselves to make the job successful, but also those young people supportive? All in all, you know, you really have to think, is it a realistic job that we can offer a young person? Is it inclusive in terms of part of our business and where we're going, and we keep them involved? And is this a Kickstart job? You know, and I think if you can answer those questions and think about it, I think then, you know, there's a real great opportunity to actually develop a young person and also drive your business forward. Because also what we're looking for and what the government are looking for is progression after that. So it's a role that's really new and exciting. Then maybe, as Nikki showed, there are other routes of progression that could continue within your business, be it, you know, a job, or be it apprenticeship, which is a job, or whatever. So, you know, that's really what we're looking for in this. You know, and we're delighted that we're in a position that we can help businesses grab this opportunity. Thank you. I think that's probably me, unless I see another slide.
No, that's lovely. Thank you, Barry.
Okay.
I'm now going to hand over to Lizzie Lyons, one of our other business skills advisors. Lizzie, are you there?
I'm here. Yep, loud and clear.
Lovely. So
you,
you've got the very exciting part of contracts and finance. So I'll hand over to you.
Thank you. Yes. So as Barry quite rightly explained, you've got quite a long process to go through until the placements are actually approved by the DWP. And once those placements are approved by the DWP, we can crack on with the interesting bit, the finances and the contractual setup. It seems quite convoluted, but what will happen is we'll have a back-to-back grant agreement. So we have a grant agreement, which is now, like Nikki said earlier on, since Friday, we now have that grant agreement in place with the DWP. So we will then act as a gateway organisation. We will then have an employer agreement with you once your placements have been approved. This means that we can work with you around things like the employability support. We will work with you around the grant spend, and we'll include all of that within the employer agreement with you. One thing to point out is the way that the funding comes through, the finances for the actual salary contribution, the way they come through means that businesses will need to cash flow the placement because the contribution is triggered once that person is put on PAYE. Once that person is on PAYE and they start their placement, that will then bring down the contributions. As a business, you'll receive the salary as a grant payment. That will come through Business West if you choose us as your gateway organisation, but it will work the same way with any gateway organisation that you choose to use. Can you go to the next slide, please, Nikki? I feel like a politician now. Next slide, please. Oh, too far. So the payments, as I said, they'll be monthly. So the salary payments will be monthly, covering those 25 hours a week at national minimum wage. They will come through Business West, and we will then pass those payments on to the employer. So because we need to pass those payments on to you, it's really, really important that once you have gone through the interview process, your selection process, and you have someone that you want to offer that placement, that you notify us or whichever gateway organisation you choose to use. It will then mean that we can make sure that we have everything in place to pass those salary contributions on as soon as they're released from DWP. The Kickstart scheme also gives £1,500 per placement towards setup and employability support costs. This money can be used for any additional spend that you're having to, any additional costs that you're incurring to offer these placements. That could be uniform, it could be IT equipment, it could be software licenses, desks, that sort of thing. In order to meet the contractual the contractual obligations put on us as the Gateway organisation, we will be providing wraparound employability support, which Julia will talk to you about very shortly. This means that we can guarantee that that employability support is being given to every single placement that goes through the Kickstart scheme through Business West. The cost of that will be taken from that £1,500. And the contribution we're asking is £500 for that. And Julia will go into what sort of thing that covers. So the £1,500, Business West will retain £500 of that, and the remainder is free for you to spend on whatever setup costs you're going to incur. There are a number of eligible costs. It's quite broad, but there are a number of things that it can't be spent on, and they're detailed in the employer agreement. And I think we'll send the link to that round so that you can have a quick, cast your eyes over that agreement beforehand. But like I said, eligible costs are anything that you incur in terms of setting up that placement. It can be spent on training, it can be spent on, like I said, IT equipment, software equipment. But what we will do as advisors beforehand is, once your placement has been approved, we will work with you and we will put a plan together on how that is going to be spent. So you have that that plan going forward. And one thing we would say is that at any time we can be audited on that spend. So anything that you do spend on those setup costs, we need you to keep a record of that and provide evidence of that. So we have that information available should DWP come and ask us to kind of prove how that was spent. I think that kind of covers the main points. We will send round a link with the slides from this meeting, just so that you can have a look at the employer agreement. It is up on the government website now. It's not short, it is a contract, but it does give you a bit of an idea what the eligible spend in terms of that £1,500 is.
Lovely, thank you, Lizzie. There's a few questions coming up in the chat, so I have been answering some, but I think what we'll do is when we go to the chat part, we'll just run through all the questions so everyone can hear my answers or our answers. So but I was just having a quick look, which is, so sorry Lizzie, that's why my presentation skills went wrong. I think it's important to point out before we go on to Julia to talk about employability, this is a standard thing that's happening among gateways to ensure that the retention of a certain amount of money to ensure that employability happens, and for us to know that a certain standard is being met. What we've done as Business West is just think about the ratio of the grant to the employability, because obviously we understand as businesses you do need money to set that employee up. Whether it's for laptop or digital access or travel or a uniform or additional training. So that's why we proposed, and we've looked at it and looked at what we can do with the funding, and that's why we proposed to retain £500 or 30% of the grant for that. And we can go into more detail about what that employability will involve, and it'll be delivered. So I'm going to go on to Julia, who's going to do that section for us.
Great. Can you hear me okay, everyone? Because my headphones went a bit strange. Can you hear me? Yep, brilliant. Okay. So I'm Julia. I'm one of the advisors in Nikki's team, and I'm just going to be going through in a bit more detail what the employability side of things is, what we're going to be covering for you. So we want to ensure that we fully meet our contract requirements as a gateway. So this means a really good level of support for the companies that we're going to be helping, but also that it's going to be resulting in meaningful employment outcomes for young people. So that's really, really important. So you'll be required to sign a code of conduct, and as Nikki said, and Lizzie has said, contribute to that employability support that we'll be delivering with our partners, and that just enables a really smooth running of the programme. So obviously we know you also want to buy some equipment, and obviously with with people working from home a lot more. That might include internet and laptops and that sort of thing. And as we've already said, you're going to need to provide receipts for us for that as we go along. And that's that bit done. Next slide, please. So what are the sort of basic work skills we're expecting to develop in the young people? Well, getting to work on time, regular attendance at work, obviously, building on those essential communication skills that are needed for any business, and working really well as part of the team. So we want to help them recognise what they've learnt, and also to help them recognise what they're good at. And so part of that process will be helping them write a CV, helping them with interview practice, so that they're going to be able to look for that long-term work that could happen after the Kickstart programme. And it might be that you as an employer want to keep them on anyway, but if not, we're going to be there to help develop those skills and help them move on and build some really, really good contacts along the way. So as part of the process, as Nikki said, you'll get assigned an employability skills coordinator who will be there throughout the process to support you. And we're going to be delivering all sorts of different aspects for you as a company and for the young person. So there's going to be inductions, regular progress reviews against the goal setting that we set up, and a nice training plan for them. An induction to any particular sector that they're joining as well, and we've got some really good partners that can help with that. Monthly candidate peer-to-peer support network, and there is one also, peer-to-peer support group for employers too, a virtual platform, and some really, really good employability workshops, which I'll talk about just in a second, and then obviously an end of programme review. You'll have ungated access to online resources as well, and we'll be signposting you to additional support. There's a lot of EU funding still out there, and obviously as Business West, we know where that all is and we can tap into that, and there'll be access to lots of really good free training. Next slide, please. So we're working with some really good partners. Western College in particular is offering Kickstart Plus with their AEB funding. And that means that there's more in-depth support for young people that are furthest from the workplace. And you can see there that we're working with the other colleges and they will be delivering really good employability training. They're very good at that already. So these are the experts in what they do. And we can tap into skill support for the workforce as well, those Serco courses that are really good. Most of these courses are free, but others that are available that you might want to go on or put your young people on will be at a really reduced cost as well. Next slide. So these are the sorts of things we're going to be able to support you with. So inclusivity and diversity workshops, delivering meaningful work placements, having a young person in the workplace, mentoring courses. So they're really good if you haven't mentored a young person before, those are going to be really useful for you. And then obviously accessibility training if required, and any specific technical training that you might need to, or they might need. And I think that's it. This is just a, sorry, next slide. That's a list of all the partners that we're working with on this programme. So you can see there's some really good people there, Bristol Creative Industries, TechSpark, and others that are going to be able to help deliver a really high level of support for you and your young people. And that's it from me.
Lovely. Thank you, Julia. So thank you very much, everyone. Hopefully that's given you a good overview of what Kickstart is and what it isn't. Now I think we'll just go through we didn't have any submitted questions via Eventbrite bookings. So normally we go through those first, but we'll just go through the chat. So guys, do you want to pick up the questions from the beginning and we'll work through them, and then I've made a couple of notes as well here, so I'll see if we cover those off as well, and then when we get to the end, if there's anyone wants to unmute, you can ask me questions directly and hopefully I can answer them.
Yeah, shall I sort of go from the top and ask the questions? Some of them were answered to the individuals, but I think it's well worth it just going over them again, like you say, for everybody. A question from Anthony Peake. Does the funding count as de minimis under the SEIS Advanced Insurance? and so comes off investor relief programme?
I don't know about the second part of the question. I'd have to come back to you on that. But in terms of de minimis, it's a really good question, and we asked DWP that, and they took some while to come back to us. But it doesn't count as de minimis. So hopefully that answers the first part of your question. I'm not sure about the second part, so maybe we can have a conversation about that, and I can come back with an answer. But it's not de minimis.
A question from Amber. We are looking to add 2 additional employees in the area of the business which already exists, but want to bring trainees into work alongside existing employees in these roles to be trained. No one would lose hours on their jobs as a result, just additional resource. Is this therefore not classed as a new role and isn't valid? I think that probably goes to what I was talking about in the presentation, and these roles sound absolutely fine. The important thing is, as you mentioned, they're trainees, they're learning a role. It's not replacing people, it's working alongside, and it just sounds to me like you've actually got ready-made mentors there. So in that case, I think if everybody agrees with me from the team, I think that possibly would be absolutely fine.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, whizzing down, apologies if I miss any. From Thomas, could it be possible to expect the applicant to have a valid driving license? My business job would offer would include driving.
So you can put that down in terms of the skills that you're requiring, but obviously they'd already have to have that, unless you were prepared to pay for that out of your setup grant. There was a question about travel as well, I think, from somebody. If there are travel costs incurred in that young person coming to the job, you can pay for that. You could buy them like a bus card or something like that out of your setup costs. So travel, anything that helps them get to the job can be paid out of that setup fund. There was also a question about graduates, I think, that someone said. I think it's important for me to say that obviously these roles have to be open to everyone. So they should be inclusive roles. So it's important to keep your mind open about that. It's something that we that thing around equality and diversity is something that we campaign for quite hard in the skills team, because there might be a really good apprenticeship that that has been made redundant that would have actually even better skills and competencies than a graduate. So I think it depends on what the role is and what skills and competencies you're looking for, and we can talk to you about that on an individual basis. But I would say I would ask you to keep your minds open in terms of recruitment and candidates. It does take, we are looking at, I think at the moment, probably minimum 10 to 11 weeks on the timeline. So if you are thinking about having one, I think it's better to get your application in sooner rather than later, because you're not obliged to go forward with it. But I think the sooner you get your application into the system, the better, whether you choose to go with us or not. I would say get on and get your application in.
I think, Nikki, just to come in on that as well, I think that the question around the university graduate also linked to the length of the programme. So what we haven't said is that this programme actually runs through the course of this year. So although it's a 6-month placement, those placements, as long as they start by December 2021, this year, so there is no rush. We just have to make sure those placements start by the end of this year, and they can therefore then run to June next year.
Yeah, exactly. And it may be, we don't know yet, it may be, it depends what happens obviously with our government, but it may be that this scheme could be extended because of the low start. We have been campaigning for that centrally to the DWP and government, central government, that it's extended beyond December. But like Lizzie said, as long as they start by the end of December, they can go on beyond the 6 months. There's also around university graduates, there was also a question around how long did the young person have to be unemployed and on universal credit. At the moment, there is no time specification around that. So as long as they're claiming universal credit and are known to their job coach, that's fine. That may change. We have had questions in the past about, can they be claiming housing benefit? Can they be, claiming job seekers allowance? Because not everyone has moved over to UC yet, and they are going they might open it up to other candidates within, potential candidates within the unemployment market, but at the moment they have to be on universal credit and known to their job coach. Any more questions, Barry or Lisa?
I think there was one in there from Claire. If the candidate turns out to be unsuitable and we have claimed the £1,500, do we need to return the money? How long might it take to get another candidate?
The last bit of the question is, I don't know. I don't know how long it would take you to get another candidate. I suppose it depends on our relationship with the job coach. We have quite a good relationship with our local DWP, so I would hope not too long, you know, that the DWP would put you some candidates forward. In terms of this, I'll just expand a little bit about this around this question actually. So if the person is not suitable, as Barry said, you're not obliged to keep them on, but obviously we would expect you as the employer to give them a chance. And I would hope that through your interview process, you would ensure that you select the right candidate. But of course, things happen, things go wrong, and you might want to terminate that employment. If we found as an employer this was happening quite a lot, we as a gateway would question that, because DWP would question it as well. So if we had, you know, you were on your third employee and they'd only been with you a couple of weeks, we would start to question what's going on there. And we would obviously question it at the first one to make sure it doesn't happen again. But you would get the 1,500, and obviously anything that you've spent and you've got evidence of spend on that, you keep. Anything that is unspent would need to come back to us, because that would be clawed back by DWP from us. But if you're going to take another person on and it's going to happen quite quickly, probably what we do is say, well, actually keep that, because it'd be quicker for you to keep the money and for us to balance it out against the next lot of money that comes down. So, you know, but obviously you're going to have to then, you know, do things like, it depends what you've spent on them already, because some of it, sort of like the hardware, you're going to have to get back. Some of it you won't be able to get back. So, you know, we would obviously have to discuss that with you. The chances are that the DWP, you know, we don't know. It's obviously a huge program. So, but there are very, you know, they're very strict around the evidence on this. So we have to be careful around what you're spending and how you're spending it. So, and I suppose it's just making sure that you employ the right person at the beginning, but we do understand that things go wrong, and so does the DWP, because we've had those conversations.
Okay. There's a question from Anthony in terms of the candidates and the expected sort of behavioural skills, challenging issues, attitudes, behaviours of candidates. Is it just a lack of experience, or could it be more challenging? I think probably, I mean, I think it's a matter for the job coach in a way as well. They'll start to match roles where they can, in terms of those long-term unemployed sometimes, but you'll have the opportunity obviously to have those interviews, to have that kind of due diligence around those candidates. But as we said, there's a vast array of young people out there with skills and things that businesses will need. So I think it's a matter of trying to sort of go through that process early and really sort of speak to those young people and see if they're a right fit for your business. I don't know if anybody from the team wants to add anything to that one. It's quite a difficult question to answer.
Yeah.
No, I think as well, we will as a team and as a Gateway organisation be there to support you through the whole programme as well. If you find that your candidate that you've selected does have challenges that, you know, need additional support, then I think Julia mentioned some of our partners, some of the colleges that can support as well and give some extra help to those people. I think the thing that we've done a lot of this so far, you know, gathering the placement details and working with DWP on the kind of contractual and the grant side. What we haven't yet experienced is the sort of young people that are coming through. So it's a little bit like a suck it and see for us as well, to be quite honest with you. We have some fantastic young people in the region that we know and we've worked with before, and I think we will see quite a variety of person come through as these Kickstart roles. We could have people that are very highly skilled, but have, unfortunately, due to current circumstances, have kind of found themselves back on universal credit. We could have people that have never been in a job role before. So I think that we're going to see quite a variety of person come through.
Yeah, and I just want to add to that, like Lizzie said, we've got some great partners, Ablaze, Babassa, Prince's Trust, Western, all really experienced at managing young people. And so, from our side, we're there. Business West is there for the business. Our partners, our employability partners are there for the young person. So each of you will have a kind of impartial person to speak to, because there's always two sides to this. So we'll be very much there for you. We'll also do some stuff beforehand about onboarding and employing a young person, what to look for. In our SMART survey, we ask for as much information as possible from you about the job role, what your expectations are, so that a job coach can really make a good match. I mean, in our experience, we've managed a creative employment program, which was a 2-year funded similar internship program. The whole mix of young people came through that, and we've also worked on things like apprenticeships with employers. In my experience, in the sort of 9 years that I've been doing this role, we've had very few things go wrong. I would say there's about 2 or 3 that I can think of, and on the whole, they've been around timekeeping and some of that has been down to travel to work, actually. So with some employers, I would say ensure that it's realistic in terms of, can that young person do that job? Do they have the right access? Do they have digital access? If they don't have digital access, you should be providing that for them. If they can't travel to you easily because you're in a rural location, how are you going to get them to the place of work? So I think you have to think about that as an employer. You obviously don't have to pay for their petrol or things like that, but you could do if you think that would help them. So in my experience, it's mostly been around, and particularly young people that have been long-term unemployed, mental health is a real issue, and confidence levels. And I've seen that in graduates as well, which is why I ask you to keep your mind open. With the Creative Employment Programme, we had a high number of graduates because it was around the high unemployment time in 2016-17. We had a high number of graduates that had been unemployed for more than a year and had real mental health and confidence issues. So that's why we're looking at mentoring in the workplace sort of qualifications for businesses as well, because you need to be able to manage that as well. So that's what I'm saying, be open to candidates too, because the same crippling confidence issues can hit anyone, whether they're a graduate or not. The Western College Plus sort of support is for those, like Julia said, that are long-term unemployed, that really are furthest from the workplace. So alongside our employability support that we'll put on and give you, they would also have additional access to free additional support, and that would be like a couple of hours every week online at the moment, and it probably will remain online, actually. So that would be a couple of hours, like one-to-one specific support every week that Western College would be doing, as I understand it. So that really is for those that really need the additional support. That's why we've created that partnership with them. Any other things?
I think there's a few questions around sort of what happens next, which I know we'll cover off just at the end.
Yeah.
For those who ask those. Stephanie has asked a few questions. Is there a minimum number of weeks of engagement from the candidate until the incentive payment is paid?
Which incentive payment?
I think we're talking about the £1,500.
That will come down as soon as the candidate starts.
Yeah.
So so the salary is retrospective by a month. So you, as a business, you need to let us know once the candidate started, and HMRC are meant to let us know as well, because the live data is meant to come through to us. But I know with some of my colleagues that they've had issues around the country, so we would ask you as an employer to obviously let us know their start date, and we'd want to see the contract of employment. And once they've started, we then would get we hopefully within a week would get the setup grants within a week, and we have to pass that on to you within 5 days. So that's why we would have already had a meeting with you beforehand to work out what that money is going to be spent on. And then the salary will come down to us sort of a month in arrears. So you have to obviously be able to cash flow it for that month.
Brilliant. And also Stephanie asks, it goes a little bit to the question before as well. How are we notified that candidates have additional needs? Does this come in advance of the interviews, and are we able to use the interviews to discuss it?
I would have thought so, yes. I mean, yeah. I think if you've got, you know, if you have specific requirements, or if you're open to you know, specific kind of offering specific kind of candidates, specific kind of roles, we can discuss that with you, and then discuss it with the job coach, and we can put that into the job vacancy template. But I would, having, like Lizzie said, none of us have gone through this process yet across the whole country, because we're just where we are at. So it's going to depend, I think, on the level of our personal relationship with the job coaches and the DWP locally. So we're obviously building those relationships all the time. So I would hope that we would get all of that information ahead of you getting the candidate put forward, and that also you could you could discuss any needs that young person has in that interview. But some things may only come out, you know, sometimes unfortunately once you've employed somebody and you have them in the workplace. But you know, we can work with you around those interview questions, etc.
And the final one at the moment that I can see from Anthony, with COVID and lockdowns, there are lots of working from home situations. Have you had any chats with BT or other broadband providers to provide subsidised Wi-Fi for Kickstart candidates, or does this need to come out of the £1,500 for digital roles support?
Can I touch on this one? I'm a bit of a Wi-Fi expert at the minute because I live in a rural area with very poor Wi-Fi. So this is something that you can choose to cover with your setup costs. We haven't had chats with people like BT, and I don't think we would look at doing that. I don't think we would be able to get that in place in time, given our experience of trying to navigate a national programme. It's really quite difficult. What we can do with you though is look at different alternatives. I have 3 different Wi-Fi's going on in my house at the moment to cover homeschooling and working from home. So I've got all sorts of knowledge in terms of the little hubs that you can buy and the cheapest Wi-Fi data packages that you can lay your hands on. There's an awful lot going on at the minute with a lot of discounts. That some of it is aimed at the homeschooling, but there are some that are aimed at the working from home as well. So we can sit down with you and we can discuss how we can work that through, if that's something that comes up as a challenge for one of your candidates.
Yeah, thanks, Lizzie. I think, I mean, just to add to that, I mean, obviously on a national level, there's lots of lobbying going on, particularly around homeschooling at the moment and access to digital access, because as we know, digital access, particularly in the Southwest, is not everyone has digital access. I know that there's conversations going on with how schools, and we've been involved in those, and talking to local governments and how we can access Wi-Fi. So I think it's something that's on everyone's minds at the moment, but there's nothing specific being discussed around Kickstart. But I will bring it up. We have sort of fortnightly meetings centrally with the DWP. So I will take that back as well, because it's not a bad idea if you could negotiate, if we could get DWP or government to negotiate something with BT on a national level actually. There was a couple of things I wanted to just pick up on that I don't think we covered, and I thought that that I might just be worth mentioning. The portal, the DWP portal, where the job vacancies are uploaded, at the moment it is a manual process, so this is what is adding to the length of time. We and other partners have been waiting for 11 weeks from our first application that went in late October. And so it took 11 weeks for the first part of our application to go through. But we think now we've got our grant agreement, it's going to be a lot quicker. So they have said to us it'll be 4 to 5 weeks for the new sets of companies that we put in to go through due diligence checks. The second stage, which is then uploading it to getting the job vacancy templates, getting the grant agreement signed, getting the job vacancy templates up, again, is at the moment it's taken about 5 weeks because they're having to do them manually, and there's a big blockage there at the moment. The portal, once the job vacancies are up on the portal, they are open from the postcode where the job is situated, so the business is situated. The jobs are open up to a 90-mile radius, so any candidate within a 90-mile radius of your location can access that job through their DWP work coach. And although, like Barry said, the roles can't be advertised externally by you as a company, there is nothing to say that you can't do any sort of PR or comms saying we're involved with the Kickstart scheme. And as Business West, we would be doing that as well, and shouting about the businesses that we've got on Kickstart. So that would be a way of raising your profile, that you have Kickstart placements, but obviously it's one of the conditions of the DWP that we can't advertise them externally. And just to underline what Barry was saying about sole traders and freelancers and unincorporated businesses, if you do want to apply at the moment, there isn't, you can apply to us through our smart survey, and what we'll do is we'll hold you and we'll pass you on to a partner once that system and process is in place. So at the moment, the solution for DWP is that a gateway employs the young person and then places them in the sole trader or the freelancer. For us as Business West, we just felt that there's too many unknowns in that, and so we're not going to do it. And health and safety risk, we're not a recruitment agency, we don't want to go down that line. And there are other people that we're talking to that are considering doing that. For that, so say the FSB, they're working in partnership with ADICO, but they would take the whole £1,500 to administrate that for you, so you'd have no setup grant. Which is the bit I don't agree with, really, because as a freelancer or sole trader, you need something to set that role up. We are looking at it as a chamber. The British Chamber of Commerce are looking at potentially a partnership like that, but I don't know the detail. There's no details of that at the moment, because that's being done centrally. So if you are a freelancer, you're unincorporated sole trader, still apply to us, and then we'll keep in touch with you and we'll hold you until we find a route through for you for this, because particularly in the west of England, and the southwest, we've got, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of sole traders and freelancers out there. So we really want to help you with this. That was all the things I wanted to underline, really. Was there any other questions anyone wanted to ask and can unmute themselves?
Nikki, I think Steve asked, he said that he had already submitted a placement via the website. Could you just go over the next steps? I think a few people are just wanting a bit of clarification on that.
Yeah, okay. So I'll just skip through these slides. We'll come back to the poll. I want to just do a little poll at the end to see if today's been useful, but I'll just go over the timeline again. Before we finish. So stage one is the initial gateway application DWP. We'll send an email to you, probably be tomorrow, and it'll have the smart survey link in it with all of the questions. That needs to be filled in by the 29th of February, so we can include you in our next cohort to DWP. They'll do due diligence checks on you using a tool called Spotlight. And these are the sorts of things that they'll look through in terms of the due diligence check. Out of our 67 applicants, we had only one refuse, which is a really good success rate. I'm really happy about that. And that was because they had been trading for a year and a half, but they'd only submitted one set of accounts, and that's what we think it's refused. And I have sort of further clarification. And also they only had one person registered on Companies House working for them. So I think that the DWP felt that they were not in a financial position to support or a resource position really to support a Kickstart candidate. We also had a couple of I think it was two of our employers placements reduced, because also what they do look at on Spotlight and Companies House is the number of employees you have. And as Barry said earlier, I think work on the idea of about a 3-to-1 ratio, 4-to-1 ratio, because you've really got to think about can I onboard the person? Can I mentor them? And probably look at doing, you could employ 2 at once or 3 at once, but is that manageable for you? Do you want to do a phased approach? Because that's all possible. Like I said, you can make the application, you can say you want this many placements, and we'll look at that application and we'll talk to you about if there's any adjustments needed, because we kind of know what works now with the application. But number of employees is important, and also whether you filed accounts or not is really important, because they look at all of that. So we hope that they will provide feedback. They don't, but I've gone back to try and get feedback. So that took us 11, 12 weeks. But the DWP said it should take no more than 4 to 6 weeks. But we are hoping it's going to be quicker. So that's stage 1. Stage 2, once you're approved, that's when we put the full job vacancies descriptions forward. And that takes about 4 to 6 weeks. And again, that's about the DWP getting them up on the portal and the lag that there is in that at the moment. Register on the website if you haven't already. There's an expression of interest, because that just puts you onto our system. You'll get an email from us anyway with a smart survey link, but still please fill in the EOI if you haven't. That's filled in automatically. You can go back in and complete it later. If you have any problems with any of that, email us at skills@businesswest, and that must be completed by Friday the 29th. If you need any more things that you want to sort of talk to us in detail about, you can also email us at skills@businesswest. So we're just going to do a quick poll. Lucy, have you got the poll there? So just so we get an idea of how it's gone. So if you found the Kickstart FAQ useful, if you'd like to vote, following the information you've heard throughout this session, please let us know what you think you might do. You'd like to become part of the Business West Kickstart application. You'd like to offer a Kickstart placement but do not wish to be part of the Business West Kickstart application. You're still unsure, or you no longer wish to offer a Kickstart placement after the information you've given us. If you don't want to be involved in the Kickstart application and have more questions, that's fine. Fill in the smart survey anyway. These questions will be on that smart survey, and then we'll come back to you and we'll have a discussion with you, or we can pass you on to another partner. In the region, in the west of England, there's at the moment that I know of, there's 3 gateways that have been approved. So there's us and 2 other gateways that have been improved, and there are national organisations, so we can pass you on to someone and explain their offers as well, and pass you on to one of our partners. So yeah, just let us know. You can tick one of those boxes and then we can come back to you. So that's lovely. Thank you very much. If you no longer wish to offer a Kickstart placement, also tick the box on the smart survey, because it's just useful for us to keep an eye on that. Or if indeed you think actually it's not a Kickstart that I want anymore, maybe it's something else, we can always have a chat with you, and one of the advisors can have a discussion with you about what that alternative might be, because it might be a paid internship, or it might be that an apprenticeship is better for you, and there are quite a lot of government incentives at the moment around apprenticeships as well. So thank you very much. 100% of you found it useful today, so that makes me very happy, and around half of you seem to be interested in going forward with us as a gateway, so that's great. But if everyone can fill in the smart survey link, we'll get back to you anyway about what we can do and how we can go forward. Just need to say thank you very much, everyone, for coming along this morning. Thank you for sharing your time with us. I hope you find it useful, and have a great day. Thank you. Bye-bye.